Hi, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell back from my wanderings and travels with several announcements, some thank yous, and an update. As you know, I've been traveling the last 2 weeks. That's why I didn't have the news and views because I didn't have the equipment necessary to do that. And I may be doing some traveling next month. The reason why is that this place has become too expensive for me to maintain, and I'm trying to find a cheaper place to live. And so I was out looking for uh, cheaper places. And while I was on the road, I had some car trouble on a Sunday morning in a little town in Oklahoma called Sayre. What happened, I was on the interstate, I was just kind of entering the town when my my cooling system completely shut down. My temperature gauge went way into the red. So I pulled off the highway, and it basically took me all day. I was stranded. I didn't have enough. I had barely enough money to make it back from Oklahoma to where I live, and so I didn't have enough money for the mechanic. No way to contact my bank, and even so, the way I have my accounts set up, I set them up for my own protection, so they wouldn't have done anything anyway. So I had to appeal to friends, and I do want to thank those of you. There's a couple of you in particular. I want to mention my friend John for helping me out. But I did get back after an all-day drive on Monday, which I wasn't planning on doing. So I want to thank everybody for your prayers. There was one kind lady that actually called me to see if I was okay. So I want to thank everybody for your prayers, for your help, because it is greatly appreciated. Being an author isn't easy, as you know, and one barely survives, and that's the reason I am looking for a cheaper place. But anyway, that's what's going on there. The second thing is, when I do leave this place again, I will probably pre-schedule, as I did not have time to do. I had an opportunity in this last travel, but it came up rather suddenly, so I had to leave quickly. It did not allow me time to schedule for that missing 2 weeks of news and views from the Nefarium. So anyway, the next time I will try and pre-schedule my news and views and some video blogs for you all, and I appreciate your putting up with me. Now, the second announcement is this. I've had some people asking about the members vid chats. There will be no members vid chat this Friday, which will be the 18th. That's tomorrow. There will, I'm planning, at least at this juncture, to have a members vid chat on May 25th, which is Friday at our usual time, which would be 8 o'clock Central Time. So hope to see all my members there. And anyway, let's get to the final announcement, which is I am still finishing up the sequel to Babylon's Banksters. I've had a lot of you emailing me and pestering me in a friendly way to get that done because you're anxious to read it. This is a very, very difficult book to write because one of the things I'm trying to avoid is saying what others have said, and when I am talking about what others have said, putting it into the kind of context, the big broad context that I think it needs to be said in. Which brings us to the news and views from the Nefarium today. I had an article sent to me by a fellow in Germany. I won't mention his name, but I want to thank you, LS, for sending me this article. It's from Die Welt, and it's from the finance section. And basically, it's a very short article, not much said about it. But the headline of the article is the German Parliament, the Bundestag, wants an accounting of Germany's gold reserves. And the German central bank, the Bundesbank, which again is kind of their version of the Federal Reserve, it's a private central bank, is resisting. All right. Now, this is an interesting thing, and it's something that I've touched on very briefly in my articles, in my blogs, in my video talks about this whole bearer bond scandal. I think what's going on here is we're seeing the tip of an iceberg of some vast criminality on the part of these central banks, stemming all the way back to the interwar period between World War I and World War II. Now, what I believe happened is that you had all of this gold in China and so on that the nationalist Chinese government was attempting to protect and get out of Asia away from the Japanese. And of course, some of that was successful, but the Japanese, of course, plundered a lot of gold, platinum, silver, precious gems, and so on and so forth during their Operation Golden Lily during the Second World War. But the nationalist Chinese government, I think, struck a deal with the United States Federal Reserve to move this gold into the Federal Reserve System and ultimately, of course, into the other central banks in the world. And in return, it received bearer bond, gold-backed bearer bonds issued by the Federal Reserve. This is the origin, I think, of all of these bearer bonds that are supposedly gold-backed that we keep seeing popping up. Now, what I think happened at this juncture is when you had that gold moved into these banks, just as after World War II you had all that Nazi loot moved into these banks, with a promise to pay when that money was requested from the original owners. I think what happened is at that juncture, that of course expanded the ledger credit making entry ability of these banks. It vastly expanded their ability to create credit. Now, this gold, I think, my own opinion is that this gold has been sold and resold so many times that there are, so to speak, so many liens on this gold that they cannot ever come out publicly and announce, number one, how much gold there really was, because I think they're lying there. I think the amount is far higher than the official estimates that are out there state, all right? Number two, the fact that there's so many liens, that they've recycled this gold so many times and sold it so many times, means that there's an inflated amount of gold paper out there. And I think what we have now is an indicator of something that I mentioned a long time ago, both on the Bite Show, I've mentioned it in some of my books, I've mentioned it in some of my blogs, that the deal that was struck after World War II between what I've been calling the post-war Nazi International on the one hand and then the Western financial elite on the other, they moved a lot of money into those Western banks. That was the only way they could launder it. And I've said many times that when you're striking a deal with the likes of Martin Bormann, you're striking a deal with Dick Cheney without the warmth and charm, that someday that marker is going to come due. You better be able to pay up, because these people know where you live, know where your families are, and they're not nice people. They'll kill you. They're quite literally, these Western bankers began to deal not only with the mafia but with Nazis. The Bundesbank and the German government, I think this move is a little signal. It's another clue that we're watching the post-war financial system that was set up, and for that matter, that interwar financial system with all of that Oriental gold and all of these gold certificate bearer bonds that are out there, fake and otherwise. I think we're watching that system begin to come unraveled. And you have now the factions that were involved in the creation of that system all clamoring to get as much out of it as they can. And I think the move of the German parliament is very interesting, because I think this is an indicator, and you can't fault them for this, that the Germans suspect that something like this has been going on, and that their gold too has quite literally been hijacked, and that the Bundesbank is stonewalling. So this is an interesting story, folks. I think we've got to watch this closely as to whether or not the German government is going to be able to get a full accounting of what its gold reserves actually are, number one. And number two, will the German government be able to reclaim its gold reserves from those central banks? That's the key issue. Will they, in fact, cough the gold up? My bet is no, because, like I say, that gold has so many liens, to use the financial term, on it, that it would be very, very difficult for any bank holding that gold to give it back without exposing the whole sham. So I think this is very interesting. And it's interesting that this move in Germany comes at the same time that we saw the French elections, and now that we're seeing runs on banks in Greece, the Greek government moving to the quite quite literally to the far left and threatening to pull out of the euro altogether. And I think that we're going to see more of that coming out of not just Greece, but Italy, Spain, Portugal. We're watching the end game of this financial infighting, this factional infighting. So watch Germany again very closely. Watch what they're going to do with their gold reserves. And we'll see you on the flip side, folks. Bye-bye. God bless. And thank you all again for your prayers and support. Bye-bye.